this and that, episode 83, and in this one I'm going to talk mostly about the US, something about weapons, and then that operation calling themselves WEF. And then there's a what the fuck that will make you smile, because I think it is exactly what is happening currently in the world. Now here in South Africa we had the situation that the US issued a terror warning and things like that, and then I saw this posted by Vusi Sambo. A source said that the US has a tendency to undermine host countries by issuing unverified terror alerts and creating unnecessary panic, that it could have ulterior motives, scheming to lobby for the setup of military camps in host countries under the guise of protecting US interests. And we know it. That's what they do. That is how they operate. They have zero respect for other countries in the world. And then this one. The US interferes in Ukraine domestic politics, overthrows the government, installs a regime openly hostile to ethnic Russians, incites civil war, and then blames Russia. Just another typical intervention by imperialist American cowards who should all swing by the neck from long ropes. And yes, I agree with what he says, and I am so sick and tired of the US meddling everywhere. And then this from Garland Nixon. Everyone the new cons target is Hitler. AP News. Bush says Saddam even worse than Hitler. Sean Spicer on Assad regime. Even Hitler didn't use chemical weapons. Is Gaddafi the new Hitler? Is Putin the new Hitler? I am really sick and tired of how the Americans operate and how they force their will and their thoughts down on everybody. But fortunately, Putin has said stop, and the whole world is beginning to wake up. And this is it's fairly old news, but something to take note of. How was it that Twitter executives born in India, taking every advantage of the opportunity of being in America, were keeping Americans from exercising their right of free speech? A very good question, but I must send these two packing. And then there is something that the American taxpayers should be quite excited about. How much money the US intelligence service has invested to support protests and unrest in Iran. $55 million for the implementation of a project called Destabilization of the Internal Situation in Iranian Society. $131 million to fund American media for information warfare. $53 million to strengthen information resources and the internet in Iran in order to maintain contact with the instigators. $353 million to promote and denigrate Iran's image in the eyes of neighbors and friendly countries through international mainstream and social media with the help of Iranian celebrities in Berlin and the UAE, who gave the CIA full access to their social media accounts. $295 million to fight and destroy Iran's nuclear power. Total, $887 million. And that's how they operate. And in the meantime, back in the States, people are sleeping on the sidewalks and sleeping under bridges and sleeping in stormwater drains. People don't have food to eat. Roads and bridges are falling apart. Their veterans are living in the streets, but they have $887 million to piss out in Iran. If the American population don't wake up and take their country back, they are doomed. They're going to be a third world. Washington seeking to weaken the EU. The United States is aiming to weaken the EU both militarily and economically, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has claimed. Europeans are already suffering from anti-Russian sanctions, many times more than the US, he said in an interview published on Sunday. There is a growing number of economists, not only in our country but also in the West, who come to the conclusion that the US goal to completely bleed and deindustrialize the European economy. And I have handled it in other Skidmarks, and the US has a plan to destroy the European economy. And that stupid Ursula von der Crazy and her cabal in Brussels is following all the instructions that they get from the shit house. And this one should be disturbing to the Australians. The US to send nuclear-capable bombers to Australia. The Pentagon is planning to send nuclear-capable B-52 strategic bombers to Australia's Northern Territory and establish a crucial Asia-Pacific military hub as their standoff with Beijing develops, according to reports by ABC News. I'm not going to read the rest, you can stop it and read it. All I can say is the Aussies better take a good look at what has happened in Ukraine. They're next. The US will not blink an eye and throw them into the mince grinder. And then we get to the weapons stories. The Italians have handed over 20 to 30 self-propelled artillery pieces to Ukrainians. This is already the 5th package of military handouts from the Macarons. Earlier, the Zazis were already rejoicing over M113 armored personnel carriers, howitzers and multiple rocket launchers sent to them by the Italian authorities. And I cannot understand that the European nations are not seeing what the fuck is happening. They are disarming themselves, but they're looking for shit with Moscow. US to gift Ukraine advanced air defense systems. Washington will provide Kiev with 8 NASAMS air defense systems, the Pentagon has said. According to the DoD, Ukraine will receive 2 of them in the near future. The US will also provide Ukraine with new anti-UAF capabilities, including the Vampire counter-drone system. Okay, and I've read somewhere that 2 has arrived, but the rest will be apparently close to 2025. By then there won't be a Ukraine. And then we get to that mentioned Vampire system. Look at that. Looks a hell of a lot like what the terrorists in the Middle East are using. It is reported that in addition to the NASAMS, the Pentagon promised to transfer drone countermeasures to Ukraine, including the Vampire system. Well, good luck with that. We've seen how the Russians are handling their anti-aircraft defense systems, and it is not closely enough to be really effective. But Zelensky is listening to his masters in the shit house and throwing his people into the mince grinders. Here's some sobering words from this guy, Frederick Bastiat. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. And isn't that true? Now we get to this one, the WEF. WEF has called for an end to private car ownership in its psychotic quest for world domination. This move, supported by Obama and other US leadership, would bring society to its knees and turn us all into peasants. And I've got one question. How long are the population of the world going to allow these cretins to get away with their shit? How long? It is amazing what they are doing and what they are achieving. And if I look at the scary shit that is coming out now on the pestilence, these people are ruthless. And if the world don't wake up, we will perish. But there up in the north is a man by the name of Putin that sent this WEF and the globalists and everyone packing. And he's not taking any shit from it. And there's this document, just to indicate that this shit of US meddling in other countries is old stories. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC, has a uniquely drug-centric history. It was founded in 1865 after the Second Opium War. The peace treaty forced China to legalize the opium trade, whereupon HSBC became the biggest commercial bank in quasi-colonial Qing China. In addition to all of these banks, there are other financial conduits of the deep state. Following World War II, a number of significant channels were established. The Marshall Plan had a secret codicil that provided funds for covert operations to be carried out by the CIA's Office of Policy Coordination. These monies were often channeled through foundations like Ford and Rockefeller, with OPC personnel moving between intelligence and foundation positions. And you can stop it and read the rest. This is an old story. In addition, the US used 10 million of recovered Axis funds in the CIA's first covert operation, the successful campaign to determine the outcome of Italy's 1948 election. Read it and weep. And then this disturbing shit. YouTube has announced a partnership with the World Health Organization to control the content that is viewed and censored, through a partnership with Google to address the spread of misinformation. This is absolutely madness. And I have to be so careful in the things that I prepare, because the slightest triggers something and I'm in the shit. But let's get to that what the fuck moment. Look at this image. Think about the things that are currently happening in the world. Think about that skidmark I did on the line timer, and then you look at this image and you have to agree. This is reality. And on that note, please like, subscribe and share the stuff. Thank you for your support.